The U.S. sends its F-22 stealth fighter jets to join drills with South Korea amid escalating tensions on the Korean peninsula. American officials say the jets are deployed to Osan Air Base as part of Washington's commitment to defend Seoul in the face of military threats by North Korea. Tensions have been high in recent months since the North launched a nuclear weapons test in February. The U.S. and its allies pushed for more sanctions on Pyongyang after the test. Washington and Seoul also ratcheted up their military cooperation by launching fresh joint military drills. The move drew a harsh response by North Korean leaders who call it provocative. In the latest of such measures by the U.S., American nuclear-capable B-2 bombers flew on the Korean peninsula, after which Pyongyang put the country in a state of war.
Alexander Vorontsov from the Institute of Oriental Studies believes China and U.S. prospective involvements with North and South Korea could lead to a global conflict.
It will be a nightmare for many countries. And first of all, for the 6 countries who met in six-party talks. We have the common border with Korean Peninsula, and China also. And of course, China can be involved because they have the treaty. Alliance treaty with North Korea first, and they demonstrated recently their readiness to prevent collapse of North Korea. And it will be 2 superpowers involved, United States and China. It's possible that the Third World War can start in Korean Peninsula, unfortunately.
The United States has sent F-22 Seoul fighter jets to participate in ongoing military drills with South Korea. Pyongyang earlier said it was in a state of war with the South following the latest round of sanctions over its nuclear test 2 months ago. In turn, Seoul warned that it's ready to carry out a preemptive strike on its neighbor if they believe an attack is imminent. James Corbett, host of the Corbett Report, joins us now for more on the issue. Mr. Corbett, we know the tension is running high in the peninsula, but why does Seoul and Washington decide to hold military drills during such a sensitive time?
Well, I suppose the official answer to that would be that this is just part of annual military, joint military drills that are held always around this time of year. But I think that we have to see that this being done in the midst of this provocation and this rising tension as a self-admitted attempt to ratchet up things and to put a little bit of pressure on Pyongyang. I think that this has to be seen as an attempt to try to rein in some of this bellicose rhetoric that we've been hearing in the last few days and to try to do something to put some of the chips on the table. But I think that this has the possibility of ratcheting things up to the point where tensions might actually spill over as a result of this. And we saw that recently with the deployment of B-2 nuclear-armed bombers in South Korea recently, which is not only worrying, I think, to Pyongyang, but also to China to have nuclear bombers that close on the Korean Peninsula there on China's southern border. I think that China won't be pleased with that either. So this is quite an escalation that's taking place right now.
So what actions would prompt South Korea to actually carry out a preemptive strike against its neighbor?
Well, I don't know if that's something that we're looking at realistically. I think that the most likely scenario here would be some sort of blunder or misinterpretation on one side or the other, because everything is on the knife edge. As I've said before, I think that all of the players here have a vested interest in keeping the tension up, but not allowing it to spill over. And I think that obviously works for North Korea, which could be easily wiped out in a military confrontation. But it also works for South Korea and America and all of the allies here in this region that also serve to benefit from this. And we've seen this directly, for example, with the announcement of more missile defense on the western coast of the United States, that there are now going to be 14 new ground-based interceptors deployed at Fort Greely, Alaska, at the cost to U.S. taxpayers of $1 billion by 2017. So this is doing a fantastic business for the defense contractors who serve to feed into this tension and play off of it. So I think that honestly there isn't a lot of plans for preemptive strikes at this moment. I think it's more a question of if this will accidentally spill over into something more.
So, I mean, how serious is this threat then? I mean, should Washington take this seriously?
Well, I think the thing to keep in mind is that the idea that there's some sort of nuclear specter hanging over America at the moment is laughable at best. Certainly, we know that the wildly inaccurate Taipodong 2 and 3 missiles, even if they can actually reach the western part of the United States, which is really just theoretical at this point, but even if they could, North Korea is still, by best analyst estimates, several years away from being able to miniaturize their nuclear devices onto warheads, and even then, the nuclear devices they have so far have only come within about 1/2 of the yield that the Hiroshima bomb had. So quite small bombs in and of themselves. So this isn't an imminent threat. This isn't something that's going to strike out any day now, I think, in that sense. So I don't think that this is a threat to the American mainland. That aspect of it is being hyped up, but if it serves to justify $1 billion worth of missile interceptors, I think the defense contractors will be laughing all the way to the bank.
Okay, so then let me ask you this. I mean, with harsh rhetoric coming from both sides, isn't it time for the international community to sit both sides together and say, let's negotiate what can make this go away, this harsh rhetoric, this threats of missiles and all of this? Is that even possible?
Well, there has to be some sort of change to the status quo here, and it is a question of what sides can be brought to this table, because obviously the six-party talks have gone nowhere and in fact have really digressed in the last few years to the point where we're now at this stage again. So I think there has to be some different players at the table. And I think ultimately most people are expecting that this will evolve into some sort of negotiation between U.S. and China, whether directly or indirectly through this confrontation. But I think those are the two main players that are feeding into this right now, and which really do have Pyongyang in the balance. So I think that it's going to have to involve those parties at some point in some way. But at this point, I just don't see how that's going to arrive. Certainly not within the framework of the six-party talks as they've existed over the past decade.
All right, we'll have to see what happens then. We're watching very closely. Mr. James Corbett of the Corbett Report. Thank you very much for your insight on this issue.